$7.99, $27.99, $797.99. A pair of jeans, a vacuum cleaner, and a flat screen TV. These were the things for which people in Long Island, New York stood for hours in the middle of the night to purchase at a local Walmart on Black Friday a few years ago. When the doors finally opened at 5 a.m., the crowd was in such a frenzy that it literally took the off its hinges, and they trampled employees who had formed a human barrier trying to keep order. One employee was overwhelmed by the crowd and became what others later described as, quote, a stepping back. 2,000 people that stampeded into the store, pushing away barricades, scrambling atop vending machines, and screaming like, quote unquote, sad witness put it. Once the other employees saw that one of their own was down, they managed to get to him and create a barrier around him and realized that he was really in trouble. They had to administer mouth-to-mouth and CPR, but before long, it became clear to their horror that he actually had died. They called 911. They tried to get the people back outside so they could take care of what was now a dead body in the store. But the people in the store would not leave. Even when they announced over the intercom that everyone had to leave because there had been a death in the store, imagine hearing that over the intercom. People in the store said, I waited in line all night, I'm going to keep shopping. That's exactly what they did. I'm going to keep shopping. An unfortunate but true window into the priorities of modern day America. I'm going to keep shopping. How did we get here? Tonight's passage from the Sermon on the Mount is about priorities. Jesus says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Hate the one and love the other, or will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot love both God and money. We're going to talk tonight about three things that Jesus points us to in this passage that literally form our priorities. We asked earlier, what do you think is important to people in Los Angeles? Now we're going to ask you, what is important to you? How's that playing out? And how do you want it to be playing out in your life? And we get some help here in this passage. So three things. First of all, Jesus says in this passage that our priorities are formed by our affections. Our affections, he says counterintuitively, are formed by our actions, not the other way around. When Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be, he's saying that what we do becomes what we love. Our actions create our affections. Our heart is formed by what we pay attention to. There's an interesting play on words in the Greek in this passage where it literally says, do not treasure up your treasures. And it gives the picture of someone stacking treasure upon treasure upon treasure upon treasure. And then in my juvenile mind, this is the first thing I thought of, honestly. This is the picture that popped into my head when I thought of that. It was this. There you go. Scrooge McDuck, right? Stacking treasure upon treasure upon treasure upon treasure. And the more he stacks it, the more he falls in love with his treasures. Now, the key here is that Scrooge McDuck is stacking up treasures for himself. Don't get me wrong, the picture you get in Scripture is not that wealth in and of itself is bad. Our priority to stack up treasure upon treasure upon treasure upon treasure and surround ourselves with them and not use them for the purposes of God, then our priorities are out of sync with the priorities of living in the kingdom of God, which again, this on the Mount is Jesus' picture of what it looks like to live in the kingdom of God. British scholar John Stott said this: "What Jesus forbids his followers in this passage is the selfish accumulation of goods, extravagant and luxurious living, the hard-heartedness that does not feel the colossal need of the world's underprivileged people, the foolish fantasy that a person's life consists in the abundance of his possessions, and the materialism that tethers our hearts to the earth." That's a great way of describing it. I love that line. The materialism that tethers our hearts to the earth. Where our treasure is, there will our heart be also. So what if we don't want to be tethered to the earth? What if we want our priorities to be different? What if we really want to begin to care about the things that God cares about? The solution is simple. We begin to invest in those things. Where our treasure is, there will our heart be. When we invest in God's kingdom, it moves our hearts towards His kingdom. I talk to a lot of people who say, kind of on a spiritual plateau, I've been in the same place for a long time, I'm not really sure what to do. And maybe that spiritual plateau is going to be broken when you begin to invest yourself into the kingdom. So ask yourself here, honestly, what do I treasure? What's important to me? And then ask yourself, is that really what I want to treasure? And how can you tell what you treasure? Look at your checkbook, look at your schedule. And then ask yourself, where am I investing? And here's the thing, maybe instead of waiting to feel something before we invest, we just need to invest. Because Jesus is telling us again here, our actions create affection, which creates priorities. Again, it's counterintuitive. We don't think of it that way. But that's Jesus' first point here. Our affections help to create our priorities. Now, then in verses 22 and 23, he gives us a different picture. He says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Listen to that again. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So what's he pointing to here? Here I think he's pointing to vision as the second thing that forms our priorities. What is our vision for our lives? And again, there's some interesting language here. The word good, referring to the eye, is actually a word which literally means clear and carries with it connotations of generosity. And the words around bad are even more interesting. It's a figure of speech used in the Jewish tradition that could be roughly translated in our culture as sort of the evil eye. It's like if you have the evil eye. So we have a choice here between clear vision, which leads to a life of generosity, or an evil eye, which is really the Jewish idiom for being stingy. The point here is that our outlook determines our outcome. When it comes to setting our priorities, our vision, our perspective is everything. The story is told of a young, prosperous young investment banker who was driving his new BMW down a road during a snowstorm. As he veered around one sharp turn, he lost control and began sliding toward a deep precipice. At the last minute, he unbuckled his safety belt, flung out from the door, leaped from the car, which tumbled down the ravine and burst into something out of Fast and Furious, but this is what it says. The trucker who saw the accident comes by, stops, found that the banker by the road, looking down the ravine, sobbing, "My BMW, my BMW, my BMW." And the trucker pointed at the man's shoulder and he said, "Look, you've got bigger problems than that. You've lost your arm. We have to call an ambulance." And the man looked down at his shoulder for the first time and realized that his arm was gone, and he said, "My Rolex." Sorry, I had to do it. We need a rim shot or something there. All right. The idea here, though, again, is that perspective is everything, right? Perspective. What is your vision for your life? What do you want it to be about? When you see the future in your mind's eye, what do you see? When you fall asleep at night, just before you fall asleep, you're thinking about things into the future. What do you see? What is your vision for your life? That will help to form your priorities. Now, I've been thinking a lot about vision, particularly our vision for the church here, and the next steps ahead, and particularly with our next home would be come about a month from now. So I want to walk you through the process that's landed us where we're going to be starting on Easter Sunday morning. And I'm actually quite excited about it tonight, but you got to hear the whole story because it's a really good kind of God story. So doing this and recognizing we were going to move from Sunday nights to Sunday mornings, the first thing we did was what all church plants did. We said, hey, we'll go look at a school, right? Because that's what church plants do. So we went around and we looked at like 5 or 6 different schools. And as we went in, we'd look at them and we'd see the space and we'd do this and we'd all come out, and every time, it never failed, every time we'd all kind of go, eh. I mean, not that a school isn't great, and the schools were like right in the middle of the neighborhoods, there was really good things about it, but every time we'd come out, we'd kind of go, it just doesn't feel like us. Because we have this value of being artistic and being creative, and at the school, we just couldn't see that. Our vision was not big enough to see that coming true. So then we started looking at, a theater, that's the way to go, right? So we talked to probably easily 10 theaters in town, and believe me, I've looked at everything there is possible to look at warehouses, and I've, snuck in places I'm not supposed to be, and you can ask Josh, it drives him crazy. But anyway, so we've looked at literally everything. We started looking at theaters next, and we got into the theaters, what we saw was, it's great space, but the kids thing wasn't going to work. Because another one of our values is children, right? We talked about this a few weeks ago, but you remember, 95% of the people who become followers of Jesus before they're 18 years of age, and 90% of them before they're 14. So children's ministry is one of the best investments in evangelism we can make as a church. So that was part of our values. So we were stuck there because we'd go to theaters and we would look for children's space and we couldn't find any children's space. And literally, I'm just telling you, man, you can ask my family. I was obsessed with this. I went back to one theater about 10 times and we looked at everything. I was even like, we could go backstage. We could probably move some of this stuff out. We could create some space for the kids. And I was talking to the people about it. And no matter what I did, I could not come up with the right answer. So a couple of weeks ago, we started this Lent group and we started praying. And as we were sitting at this Lent small group, we said, hey, what are we praying for together? And I said, hey, we need to pray for this next thing because I don't see the right solution in front of us, and we're way beyond the time when we should be. And so the people said, yeah, we'll pray together. And then the next week, we came together, and we were going to pray and fast. And what I said to the group that night, that was this past week, what I said to them was that, something's got to move for this to happen. Something's got to move. Somebody's got to change their mind about what needs to happen and help us. The next day, after our meeting, I get a call from one of the theaters. And the guy says, hey, so tell me what you're thinking. And I said, well, here's the problem. We see this great, we can't find any kid space. And literally, I walked to every vendor and every person who was renting space close enough in proximity to do children's ministry in this little area. I went to every single person. They all said flat out no. And this guy said, let me look into that. Somebody's got to move. Something's got to change. He calls me back the next day and he said, hey, I got it figured out. They'll rent to me, but we can make this work. And we can give you this children's space. And he went on to describe it, and it was bigger and than anything we had seen anywhere. So now I'm thinking, well, God moved. So where are we going to be? This is going to be a surprise to some of you, because some of you are thinking, I know what he's talking about. You actually don't know what we're talking about, because this is a new thing. All right, here it is. We're going to be in the 18th Street Arts Center, a little place smack in the middle. If you draw a radius around it in Santa Monica, it's literally smack in the middle of Santa Monica. And you kind of can see some of it and kind of get some of the vibe. That's one of the galleries, and that's kind of the space. If you go to the next slide, you can see, this isn't a great picture, but there's some of the space of the theater. It's a gorgeous, beautiful, really fun kind of space for adults. And then we don't have a picture of the kids thing. And the reason we don't have a picture of the kids thing is because it's literally right next door, and they're putting in like a brand new floor and repainting it. There's all this beautiful stuff that's going in. So we don't have a picture of it, but it's amazing. Far better than anything we had seen. Now, what are we inviting them into? So I'm going to just give you a little hint about what's coming. So on Easter, we're going to start a series called Q&D. Not Q&A, Q&D. The format of this series is I will speak, but it'll be shorter than normal. We're going to have a person each week from Resonate tell a bit of their faith story, and then we're going to have sort of a feedback and discussion time each week. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk through and work through with people I call them the 10 big questions. Every faith has 10 big questions they have to answer, every system of belief. They're all kind of the same question, but they have different answers to it. So let me just show you what we're going to be doing. If you can walk us through this. Give me the next slide. So we start Easter with an overview of the 10 basic questions common to all belief systems. On the next week, we're going to talk about, is there a God? Does God exist? And if so, what is he like? The next week, can we know truth? If there's a God, how does he communicate with us? The next week, how did we get here? How is the universe created? How is it sustained? Who am I? How did we come to be as human beings, and what does it mean to be human? What's wrong? What's gone wrong with the world? How do we find where sin and evil come from? May 17th, we get to where can I find help? Who or what can save me? Do I actually need a Savior? And if so, where do I look for that? How can I know and do what is good? Once we kind of discover how to find help, how do we become the people that God is calling us to be? And then how do we live together? We've been created for community. But how do we find that and live that out? What happens when I die? That's a big question in all belief systems. Is heaven or hell real, or is it simply all over when we die? And then finally, is life random? Is there purpose and plan in the world? And then that week will be the kickoff for our big Summer of Soul thing, which is a whole other thing that we'll tell you about. It's going to be great. So here's the thing. All of this is set up to give people who are not followers of Jesus yet an opportunity to engage in these key questions in their lives. And then we're going to invite them in 2 different ways. One, you will invite them in, right? Because they're your people. And then secondly, we decided we want to make kind of be a presence in the neighborhood. So we're going to be sending out 10,000 mailers, 10,000 door hangers, and that means that a bunch of us have to go out and hang some door hangers. That's going to be great. 10,000 is really not as bad as you think. Daryl and I and one other person did 1,000 of them in about 2 hours the other day. So we're going to kind of cover the neighborhoods. We're going to get to know people. And then we're going to invite them into the Easter weekend grand celebration, which is our first gallery outreach created by Resonate folks. So all of the windows that we've been creating over the last 10 weeks, if you're new here, each week we've had an artist bring in a window that connects to the passage, and now we're doing something different. But we have 10 windows that we're going to create a gallery of. We're going to be at the G2 Gallery on Abbott Kinney. You guys know where that is? So we're going to be there on First Friday. Good Friday is First Friday. Tons of people. So it'll be an opportunity for people to come in and engage with these windows into the kingdom and into our soul. And then we'll invite them, obviously, to Easter Sunday morning, the celebration at 10 a.m. at our new site. And then afterwards, because we have space to do it, we'll have an Easter egg hunt. All kinds of great things are going to happen. And then, in case you're wondering what's going to happen on Sunday nights, we are going to be doing some stuff on Sunday nights. If you go to the next slide here. A couple of weeks after we begin the Sunday morning program, we're going to be doing something on Sunday night called the Seek course. This is an 8-week course, which basically is a parallel to what we'll be talking about on Sunday mornings, but in a smaller environment. So if you've ever taken the Alpha course, it's very similar to the Alpha course. So stuff happening there as well. So all that is to say this. Remember, we have to aim, right? We had said this a few weeks ago. We want to attend, invite, we want to match our resources to what God is doing in this process. And all of this I'm saying because I hope that part of your vision is to be a part of this together. Because no matter what, even if it's not this, somewhere in the context of your vision, there needs to be space for God's kingdom work. And here's the thing, this really isn't the only way. To connect with us is not the only way to do that, obviously. But God is at work here. So I'm hoping that many of you are going to continue to be with us in that process. And then all of that leads us to the third thing Jesus about in this passage, the ultimate thing that Jesus says forms our priorities. We have our affections, we have our vision, and then finally we have our master. What's at the center? When we get to verse 24, Jesus really lays this on the line. He says, no one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So there's a real choice here. Again, the Greek word for money there is mammon. It's kind of a way of personifying money. It's Jesus giving it a name and almost a personality. And that's kind of unique in Scripture. And the reason he does it is because money makes your heart in a way that very few things, if anything, do. Now, it's important to understand exactly and clearly what Jesus is saying here. He's not saying that it's not a good idea to try to serve both God and money. He's not saying that he commands us not to try both God and money. He's simply saying that it cannot be done. It's not about a command. It's not about a suggestion. It's not about, here's what you should do. He's just describing reality. He's saying it cannot be done. We can no more serve God and mammon than we can walk in two directions at the same time. It's just not possible. The two are mutually exclusive. So the popular compromise between the two here, serving God sometimes and then serving the American dream at other times, Jesus declares here to be impossible. And here's what really starts messing with you. Are we going to pursue authentic discipleship, real spiritual formation, the way of Jesus, or are we going to pursue the American dream? Now here's the thing. I very rarely make either-or statements. I really shy away from either-or statements when I speak because I think often churches are guilty of overstating their case to make the point often. So I don't like it when we get to these places where it says either-or. I'm always like, I'm not sure that's the case. There's a lot of gray in life. But here is a very clear place where Jesus does not have an option. It's an either-or. He says, you have to make a choice. You have to ask yourself, who are you really serving? So here's a way to think about this. Has Jesus, if you're a follower of Jesus, has Jesus or your experience of Christianity simply become a subcomponent of your overall life as the American dream? Does Jesus fit inside of your picture of that, or does he define it? And if he is a component of the good life for you, then who or what are we really serving? Have we become so focused on the American dream that we've ceased to operate with good judgment? I mean, what if the American dream is not Jesus' dream? That starts to mess with you, doesn't it? Again, author John Stott puts it this way. Anyone who divides his allegiance between God and mammon has already given it to mammon, since God can only be served with an entire and exclusive devotion. To try to share him with other loyalties is to have opted for idolatry. This is harsh language. What do we do with this? If we make Jesus a subcomponent of our vision, of our affections, then we've made something else. So again, who are we really serving? Who is our master? What is important to you? Big thing. And friends, I'm not saying it can be answered in one fell swoop by any means. But tonight, we've been building towards something here, and I can offer you a very practical suggestion as a way to invest your affections and expand your vision and serve your master. And it doesn't cost $798.99. It doesn't cost $27.99 like a vacuum cleaner. It doesn't cost $7.99 like the pair of jeans did at Walmart. How about $3.99? $3.99. That's all it would take. Here's what I mean. When Dee and I to leave our old home to come here for this new thing we were doing in this church. And we would have these little coffees, and we'd say to people, hey, you can support us. And we came up with this little catchphrase, and the catchphrase was this. And again, it's really cheesy up front, but we used it anyway. And the catchphrase was this: for a latte a day, plant a church in L.A. Yeah, it's really cheesy. But it works. You remember it, right? You'll go out remembering that. For a latte a day, plant a church in LA. So here's what we did. When we did our little coffees, we would bring people a little card, and we'd say, hey, you could join with us, and we'd bring it to them in a little cup, because we go, see, for the price of this every day. And here's the deal. I did the math on this. If everybody in this room, if everybody that was a part of Resonate said, I'm just going to do that, just that, we'd be fine. Just that. Now, for some of you, that's a stretch. For others of you, you need to do a whole lot more, honestly. Why? Because all of us need to be reaching towards this. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Can you give me the next slide there? All of us need to be reaching towards that 10-10-80 plan in our lives. Maybe you're not there yet, but we're reaching towards it. Now, I'm just going to give you a little quiz here. Just 2 questions, multiple choice. First question is this. If American Christians, now, these are people who are defined, this is a real survey that happened. So, and these are people who define themselves as saying their faith is very important to them and they attend church at least twice a month. So if American Christians, based on that definition, were their own economy, where would they rank in terms of the annual earning income power of the countries of the world? Would they rank A, 181st, B, 57th, C, 9th, D, 6th? You know what the answer is? D. American Christians earn more than $2.5 trillion. On their own, these Christians could be admitted to the G7 summit as one of the world's 7 largest economies. Second question. If all these Christians gave away 10% of their income, which of the following could we do? A, sponsor 40 million children breaking the cycle of poverty. And to give you a sense of the scale of 40 million children, the entire population of all the people in California is 35 million. B, send out 1.5 million indigenous missionaries into countries that are closed to outside missionaries, which is very expensive. C, increase by 21-fold the funding of Bible translations, printing, and distribution. D, start 150 Christian universities in Eastern Europe, South Africa, South America, Eastern Asia, places that are underrepresented. You know the answer to that one is E, all of the above. If American Christians, defined as those who gave 10% a year, who we defined as possible, but gave 10% a year, it would generate an additional $50 billion in charity a year. Wow. Just think what that could do for the world. And just think, if everyone in the room did that, what we could do for Santa Monica. Just the people in this room. And you may not be there yet. And if you're new here tonight, this is the time when we've been building up to. We've been talking about our next steps as a church, and we've been asking people to prepare to turn in a little card tonight that talks about giving and what they would give for the next year here at Resonate. So we're going to do that together in just a minute. And I want you to think about this as a holy moment. It's an important moment. So you can take your, if you're sort of a regular around here and you want to participate in this, just take your little card out of the cup. We're going to give you a minute. Josh, come on up. We're going to play some music. But I want to do something else for you. I need to be serving God. Not God and money, not God and the American dream, not God and whatever the heck it is else that I want, but God. So let me ask you to bow for just a minute. So, Father, these words of Jesus are incredibly challenging. No matter where we are, where we're coming from tonight, as we sit and we think about again, maybe the second most important announcement after Daryl's and daughter is their pizza. So when we leave, you can have pizza. So